Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded January 27th, 2021 or December 57th, 2020. You make the choice. Good evening, Franklin.
Good evening, Edward. Nice that we're recording in the evening again.
Well, this is the new norm, right? Because you don't get up like I do, right? So, but no, this is the only time that you and I can sort of find time in our day and our life to make sure that we don't keep pushing the podcast and the Twitch stream. And Wednesday's a good day. Wednesday's generally, people call it hump day, but it's an admin day. I get to figure out what I did wrong the first 2 days and figure out what I can do right the next 2 days, right? And we have a good time. And in Georgia, the land and the birth creation place of Chick-fil-A, you can go down to the Chick-fil-A near my house and they have a special, right? So you can get extra fries with your stuff. And I know how much you love Chick-fil-A French fries, right?
That's right.
And other than that, and this is a good time. I mean, winding down a little bit, figuring out a couple of things, the weather is actually getting better here in Atlanta. I mean, it's raining now, but it was relatively warm at about 45, 50 degrees today. We had some really bad thunderstorms last night, and they woke me up around 2:30. I didn't think I was going to go back to sleep, but I did, and then just popped back up at 5:30.
It's normally what time you get up at 2:30.
You know what? You're exaggerating. 4:30 would not have been a stretch. 5:30 to 6:15 is about where I decide I've had enough of this sleeping stuff, right? The world is passing me by, so let me get up.
Well, this is the second time that we're recording on Twitch. I kind of feel like, the old guy learning how to use a remote control. So hopefully we'll do this right here. So
it's getting better. I actually have it streaming on another laptop as a casual. So to the listeners and people that are following us, if you see me looking to my left, Franklin told me to make sure I put it on the laptop so I can act like I'm there, right? But I can see it now. It's actually come through pretty good. There's a little bit of a lag, but
there's going to be about 3 or 4 seconds. So
we need to take a page out of what it was, that Flash Boys high speed internet trading. Hey, totally off topic here. Have you guys been watching the markets and seeing these things where these individual crowdsourcing people are bumping up the stock across different companies, and the hedge fund companies and stock market is actually not liking what's going on?
Is that what happened with GameStop?
Yep.
Oh, GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, which is one of my favorite places, my secret vice, right? I love Bed Bath & Beyond for some reason. And like 7 other companies. So one of my good buddies who's he's an IT guy, but he's a day trader too, and does well, and the cryptocurrency type of guy. He's been pumping money on and waiting till the overnight markets, the foreign markets come up, see what's going on, don't have any context. They pump money in. And the problem with it is that this is what hedge funds have been doing for a while, purposely shorting companies, stock down, buying a whole lot, and then, get out of the way, stocks go back up, they make a ton of money. But now you're saying that with a combination of things between Robinhood, folks at home with more time to research, right? Realizing that, financial advisoryship is as good as what you pay for, right? It's been proven. Even Warren Buffett has said, you could take a dart and throw it, right? Follow the S&P 500 or index fund or ETF. You'll beat any hedge fund manager. So the hedge funds people are now trying to get the SEC involved and White House, like, what are we doing here? It's pretty interesting. I know it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but my son's in that industry also, right? Private equity company and everything. He's gave me some pretty interesting insight that I won't share, but that sort of consumed my attention today outside of my day job, right? But what about you, Franklin? What happened to you today? What happened to you? I haven't talked to you since Monday.
On Monday, I tried to move a barbell with my face, and it didn't work out too well.
You told me. I'm not laughing at you.
Yeah, right? Sure. All right, so we have a guest this week. So why don't you do the intros?
Well, so Rod Trent is a an adult prodigy, right? He's
Adult.
skilled in his job, and decided, you know what, this security thing may be something, right? Maybe I'll take a stab at it. And he stabbed it, he slashed it, he kicked it, he threw it in the dirt, and he ate it with fava beans. The dude is good, right? So I've been tracking him and watching him, and so he's
That
been
doesn't sound
doing.
right, Edward. You've been
Well, look at the
tracking and
hacker
watching
dude,
him?
right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Be afraid, Rod. Be afraid.
Oh, I need my hat now. Hold on.
Oh yeah, get your hat, man.
This may not be as good. It's one of my outside running hats, but let's see.
There you go.
That.
Yeah, I'm a big runner myself.
Yeah.
I started marathon training on Monday.
I have run, let's see, 2023 days today straight.
Wow. I've run 2 days straight.
All right. Good job. Hey,
Who knew?
I'll slow down.
All right. We got to talk. We definitely got to talk about that too. I didn't know we had that in common. So Rod Trent is I believe that his title is CXE Superstar, KQL Inventor, Microsoft Guru, all things security. But the reason I follow him and not track him is because he's extremely skilled and knowledgeable, all jokes aside, around any and all things Azure Sentinel, particularly around optimization and modernizing the SOC and making the SOC job or SOC practitioner less onerous. You name it, from orchestration to playbooking, which is essentially the same thing, and understanding Signal. So one of the folks that I wanted to get on is, I say, Rod's got to come on and talk about whatever he wants. It'd be super interesting to hear his perspective on where Azure Sentinel is, as it's slowly in being compared to the other enterprise so-called SIMs, which I don't like the term SIM at all, but splitting hairs. And just bring some of his insight to this as we start to get some of the heavy hitters in the data analytics, the Microsoft security stack, and he's definitely an InfoSec person that a lot of our listeners should take notice to. So I won't go through. He wrote a book. I don't know if he did that. He climbed Mount Everest backwards. I won't go into that. He held his breath for 6 minutes and was so whatever. Rod, you go ahead and give your best intro. You talk about who you are.
Hold on a second. Let me jump in here. I have to say, I write training material for Azure Sentinel, and my entire goal in the training material is that students, when they get through the class, that they can actually understand what Rod is blogging about.
Oh, no.
I know.
That means I'm not doing a good job. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, no, it's good. I'm the same way. Hell, I'm in the group. So I'm like, I think I know these. Let me get in my lab and see, right? But that's just a gap in the skill set. Rob, KQL skills is, there's a huge gap in the skill between he and mine, right? I came from the M365 security stack, which is point and click, right? Now I'm really having to dive into Sentinel because I've been on that Sentinel team a year. So, but you're right. I do have to go back and reread his blogs about 2 times, right? 2.5 times. And then I go like, wow, that's pretty good. Then I steal it and tell everybody I invented it when I go talk to customers. I do that.
That's what it's for. Absolutely. Wow. So I don't even know how to continue at this point. I don't know who I am anymore. Based on your introduction, I'm just, I don't know. But anyway, I'll do a quick intro.
Please.
If you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Rod Trent. I am, as suggested, an Azure Sentinel resource for Microsoft. I do blog. I do promote Azure Sentinel quite a bit. I don't know if you all have seen it. Hopefully those that are interested in this podcast Twitch stream have seen it today. But if not, I'm willing to share. We made some announcements over the past couple of days about our Microsoft financials. As part of that, hopefully you've seen that Microsoft is now a $10 billion security company, which is amazing considering where we have come from in the past couple of years. I remember starting out with customers a couple of years back with Azure Sentinel. Early on, customers were kind of interested in Microsoft as a security vendor. But then as things kind of progressed, I remember sitting with a customer one time and they just looked at me while we were talking about Azure Sentinel. He said, I can't believe it. Microsoft, who would have ever thought Microsoft would have been a full platform security vendor? And they absolutely are. And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. We really are. And as part of that announcement today, talking about the security piece, we now have right around a little over 9,000 customers utilizing Azure Sentinel right now. Azure Sentinel was released publicly in September of 2019. So almost getting on about 2 years or so, but it's really come far in the short time that it's been available. You talked about those other SIEMs. I'm very familiar with those. I'm a security person by nature, right? So I do love this area, this industry, but if you go back to how my career started in my professional life, it was SMS, SCCM, it was management, but literally back then there were no real security tools. We used SMS, which if you remember, if you go back far enough when I started, which was 1993, something like that with SMS, now it's SCCM and now Endpoint Manager. We use those management products to secure, our environment, right? So we didn't actually have security tools. We had things like Norton Antivirus and, all that goofy stuff. But my personality is this secure component. I look at the way that I approach security the same way I approach the things that I love, like TV shows. I don't know if you're familiar with the Curse of Oak Island TV show on the History Channel. And it's the stupidest, dumbest show, and they lead you on the entire time. And my wife absolutely hates it, and she makes fun of me for watching it. But it's about it's about the digging. It's about the investigation. It's about trying to find treasure. And even though we're talking about security here, it really is kind of that same approach, that same perspective, right? We're digging for things. We're trying to uncover nefarious occurrences and the nefarious events in the data that we're ingesting. And that's literally the same thing. I grew up on Hardy Boys.
Yep, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew.
Wasn't the $6 million man? And
wasn't the Curse of Oak Island? Isn't that a video game?
They may have turned it into a video game. I'm not sure, but it's absolutely a TV show. We got two brothers that bought land in Nova Scotia, bought an island, and there's this whole history of 250 year legend about treasure being buried there by
pirates.
Well, they haven't figured out who has buried it yet, and they've only uncovered pieces of it, so they're still digging. The TV show is in its 10th season. Literally every season they pull out like 2 or 3 items, but that's enough for me to go, oh my goodness, I got to watch the next episode.
When you're bringing up TV, I thought you were going to go a different direction there.
So
$6 million man, potentially.
So little known fact. I don't think I told you this, Franklin. I've been in Nova Scotia.
Have you really?
Yeah, Navy. So we would take our submarines to do decom in Nova Scotia. It rains sideways. So you standing topside, the rain would come down and the crosswind would bring it sideways.
Oh my goodness.
That was the funniest thing.
That's crazy.
And drinking beer over there is like drinking grits or drinking oatmeal. Like, golly, can beer get any thicker? Right? It was interesting to be there, super friendly. I forget some of the native dishes that they had, but that was literally 2 decades ago. I've been out of the military since 97.
Wow.
And that's when I sort of started my IT career. So not quite as far back as you have, but I get it.
Not far back as I have. Are you saying I'm old? You are.
You are, yeah. I am too, though. So
yeah, we all are. Oh my goodness! If you remember the words IT, I'm sure you're old, right? I was IT before the term IT existed. I worked for one of the first companies that I worked for kind of a global company for information technology. We were considered glorified secretaries, and on Secretary's Day, guess what? We got bouquets of cookies.
Cool.
Yeah,
I love cookies.
the IT folks.
So we sort of got an idea of, where we sort of put our toe into this technology arena, and I think that all of our backgrounds are going to be similar. I taught myself basic Macintosh, tinker, break stuff. I fancied myself becoming a cosmologist or an astronomer. I was a big fan of Carl Sagan. Realized I didn't pay any money, so I had to go do something else. So
Dragons of the
electrical engineer by degree, but realized that wasn't going to pay any money either, right? And then when this internet thing took off, just as I was getting ready to separate from the Navy, I'm like, man, this internet thing may work. This AOL is going to be the company that's going to dominate the world, right? And I did have my very first offer prior to separating from the military was America Online, but I did not want to live in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm.
So I decided to come to Atlanta and take a PC job, but we can talk about history later. So let's modernize and do a flash forward to the future. What do you do now? Tell me what you do now.
Oh my goodness. So I've worked with this product, Azure Sentinel, for almost 2 years. I'm fortunate, right? So when I first got interested within Microsoft in Azure Sentinel, I was probably one of the first 10 in the entire company accredited to deliver on this. And that's globally, right? The majority of folks that got accredited initially were in Europe. I was like one of the only American resources. There was interest initially, and I literally covered every customer that had any interest in Azure Sentinel. Since that time, it was almost like kicking a hornet's nest. The interest in this product is exploded. You really wouldn't believe it. I literally fill every waking minute of my working life with Azure Sentinel. I do nothing else. Like I said, I'm fortunate. I have colleagues, I have people who are in the same role as I am that they have to split time between different topics and different subjects. They go from security to management to blah, to blah, to blah, right? Yeah. I'm fortunate because I got in early in this product that this is literally all I do. So I'm deep level with Azure Sentinel with our customers, literally almost every aspect of it at this point.
Let me ask you a quick trivia question. You may or may not be able to answer this. So I think the very first time I met you, do you know Andrew Walker? You may. He used to be a big Azure Advanced Threat Protection, Advanced Threat Analytics guy.
Oh yeah.
I think it's Andrew. Yeah. And we were in New York, and I think they had Tel Aviv in a day, or Tel Aviv and NYC. And I don't know if you were there. That's why I think I first met you. And they were talking about it. But was there another name for Azure Sentinel before it was called Azure Sentinel?
Insight management.
There you go. And I tell customers
I'm sorry.
It's
not insight management. It's
security insights.
Security insights. Oh my goodness.
Yep, that's what it was. So when customers talking about, well, the product is immature, I'm like, it was Sentinel before you knew it as Sentinel, and only certain customers and partners, because I covered partners for a while before joining this team, and they had this Azure knowledge, so that the lift to them, because it wasn't bundled. You had to go And I look at it now, and then I sort of fell off because I wanted to go do some other things. I wanted to get a bunch of stuff with the MCAS team, so I went away, and when that early Sentinel mindshare started, and circle back around, hindsight being 2020, even though 2020 is a horrible year, I lost a year on that innovation that I could have been in the groundswell of it, right, in the ground rules. But so you said you do everything Azure Sentinel. All right, so we're not going to boil the ocean. I'd like to see that done, but let's narrow it down to say, hey, you got to convince me as a customer, and I have data requirements that I want to ingest 1 petabyte a day. Why should I use your product? Give me 3 things about Azure Sentinel that says, hey, you can meet my needs. I need the atypical security information and event management, but tell me what's your superpower if you were Azure Sentinel, not Rod Trent?
So I have several superpowers. And knowing that what your data requirements are tells me right away that you have experience probably with some legacy on-premises SIEMs. You're like, this is my data requirements. You absolutely know because you've done that inventory, because you're probably using a product already. I would say 80 to 85% of the customers that I work with, they are coming from a different product. Either they're wanting to come from a different product, or they're interested potentially in coming from a different product. Again, if we meet their data requirements, if we can provide some value over what they have been used to. The first thing that comes to my mind from an Azure Sentinel perspective is cost, right? So you know your data requirements. We know that those on-premises kind of old legacy tools, they do things a certain way. If you have 1 peta of data, you're going to build out storage. If you want to add something else, you're going to need to build out additional storage. You're going to have to put some cycles behind maintenance and deployment and upgrades and all this good kind of stuff. Some of those seams have cloud-based focus now. They have cloud-based solutions, but it's the same thing, right? So if tomorrow I need to go beyond my data requirements, I have to pick up the phone and call that vendor and say, guess what? I need more space. Well, okay, we can sell it to you for this. Give us a little bit of time. We'll give you some more space. Azure is completely different. Azure Sentinel is built on top of log analytics workspaces. And if you're not familiar, log analytics workspace is like just a big stretchy old bucket, right? So if tomorrow you came in and said, our requirements have changed, we need more, guess what? You don't have to call us, just send it. Send the data to the log analytics workspace. It's going to take it. And then you're going to be able to do in the cloud, be able to identify within the next X number of days what your new requirements are. You may not need all that data. You may get that data ingested, right? And it's sitting there and you realize, oh, we don't want the performance data. We just want the security data. So we don't need that. Our requirements really, they change, but not as much as we thought. So instead of being locked into that original vendor contract that you requested more space for, now you log analytics adjusts, and you can adjust your costs along the way as you go, because Azure is it's a subscription model. It's a pay-as-you-go model, right? So Azure Sentinel is absolutely the same way. You can adjust your cost. If you determine that you're going to ingest 500 gigabytes and that's your max, you can change from pay-as-you-go to capacity retention, right? So you can kind of change, so you get a cost savings on the data that you're ingesting. So you can actually manipulate the cost yourself. You don't have to call somebody and do that. The other thing I should note about that as well is that, particularly from a data perspective, we can ingest data literally from anywhere, right? And almost any type of data source. We support common event format, syslog. We can ingest data from AWS. We can ingest data from Google. We can ingest data from on-premise. So it's a complete hybrid solution that exists in the cloud. So you have this one single pane of glass, literally for every type of data source that you want to ingest and manage from a security proponent.
So that's good to hear. And frankly, it's like that validates, and puts weight behind what I consider definitely an industry expert and someone that I follow. That said, yep, these are the things that I communicate effectively to a customer. And you're right, everything went on. Franklin, you had a question?
So what are the most common data do you actually see being ingested, say, from on-prem? What are the most common data sources?
So it's kind of split. It really depends on the customer. For those who are heavy, Windows, they'll ingest security events from Windows servers or whatever. Some customers, as I have decided to deploy the log analytics agent literally across every Windows 10 system as well, which is not recommended, but they do that. So that's a lot of data.
So what do you recommend?
Servers potentially, or at least one server that's connected to the domain that's going to be able to capture. You can use that server as a forwarding server for other security events, for the things that are important, right? Because again, those older tools, those old legacy tools, there was kind of this mentality that, okay, we build the boxes, we build the storage, let's just collect everything. And they would literally collect data that they didn't need, that was not even critical or valuable for security, right? We have the ability within Azure to filter, parse the data and get very specific about what you're seeing. So it's security data, not let's put performance data with security. The other really popular type of data is literally just devices. Cisco, Palo Alto, Meraki is a popular one. Creating your forwarding rules, send it to a syslog server, and that syslog server forwards to the Azure Sentinel Log Analytics workspace through the Log Analytics agent.
All right. So let's say I have 100 workstations. You're saying use window event forwarding to another machine that then use the agent to send up the data from there?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see a lot of customers using Sysmon to capture more analytics from the workstations?
So not a lot. So
Okay.
not as many as I would expect. And it might just simply be because they're not privy and understand that that's available. But there are a few. Yeah, there are a number of those.
So with the change coming that we're going to be able to ingest the Defender for endpoint data, not just the alerts that are taken on, we're going to be able to get quote unquote the raw data. How do you compare that raw data from Defender versus Sysmon data coming in? Do you think Defender data is all you need, or would you still recommend people that are doing heavier endpoint
so
analytics use Sysmon also?
From what I know, I believe the Defender data will be enough. But as with anything, right, we're Microsoft. We give you literally every way to do anything, and sometimes give you the wrong way to do things. Anyway, but it would just be a matter of just identifying what it is gathering and what it's not, and use kind of Sysmon as this other thing in case, just in case. But I can almost bet that the Defender stuff's going to capture enough. And the things that we're doing, particularly with an Azure Sentinel, with the machine learning and the AI, that was the thing I was talking about earlier, where so many customers literally collect everything because they don't want to miss anything. The machine learning and the AI that we have built into Azure Sentinel, particularly our Fusion analytics rule, it's intelligent enough and continuing to be developed that it can take those kind of blah events and tie them together into a larger story of what happens. So if you missed something through whatever log file that is, it's going to catch up. It's going to capture it.
All right. So if a customer comes to you and they say, okay, we can only afford to have Defender for endpoint or M365 Defender, or I can have Sentinel, which one would you tell them to take? This has been an ongoing debate that we've had on the podcast. That's why.
Well, hold on. Let's frame the question a little bit better, because you grooving, Your Honor. He's leading the witness. Okay, he's leading the witness. All right.
Well, I'm absolutely going to tell you Azure Sentinel, but I just have to give you my reasoning.
So let me give you the ability to just say this and then that. Take Frank's question, and nobody's holding your feet to the fire, right? But take my question secondary and say, if you had to partner an additional technology with Azure Sentinel, you get only one other, what would you do then? And say, Sentinel will be this, but if you add this, oh my God, you get really bang for your buck. And I'll give you a short list of things. We're going to stick to the Microsoft technology because this is a Microsoft Security Insight podcast. You get to choose between, and I may interchange between the old nomenclature and acronyms and the new. I'm going to use the old, right? Because some of our listeners, and so Trent, you get an idea of the demographic of our listeners. We anticipate that our individual listeners are 300 to 400, and we'll have a splattering of 200. So, but most of the individuals are grabbing the technology and putting it in. So I don't think we're talking over any of our listeners' head. You get to choose between Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. We know there's a new name out there. Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, synonymous, and then Azure Advanced Threat Protection, and then Azure Defender for identity. And I'm getting all that. But choose
IoT. You forgot IoT.
CyberX, right? Or Microsoft Defender for IoT, because I'm getting all into that now. You get to choose one. And this is irregardless of the vertical or the industry. To say Sentinel's going to be my pane of glass, but I get to choose one more product from you guys. What do you want? What's going to say this is going to make my life better?
You know, there's that what if scenario. And it really boils down to what the customer wants and what they need specific to their security requirements. We're talking, industry policies, industry requirements, GDPR, all this good kind of stuff, right? Azure Sentinel becomes this single pane of glass. What is going to provide you value additionally? You're going to kind of have to take the approach to determine if that's going to provide the value. I would say Defender, right? Just depending, just
You said
and when I
Defender's
say
all of them.
Azure, and I say Azure Defender, I actually mean Azure Security Center.
Okay.
Right? Because Security Center is an absolutely awesome product in itself because it gives those organizations who are just kind of starting or in process of migrating workloads from on-premise to the cloud to start fresh, start different, start secure, because Azure Security Center is going to give them those recommendations. Hey, you did this, you could do it better, go down that path. But Sentinel provides that additional information. It ties all those other different log resources together, particularly the hybrid stuff, the other stuff that's non-Microsoft within your environment, gives you that single pane of glass so you can build a team around cybersecurity approach, right? So
spoken like a true consultant, right? You got to get in, you got to do an assessment, discovery, value case, use
that's
case,
not a black
risk
and white.
case.
That's not a black and white decision at all. Yeah,
I'll give my highly opinionated fact.
MCAS.
I'm not talking to you, Frank.
I love MCAS, but I love MCAS, but it has to be tuned correctly. Otherwise, it's just noisy.
It is, and I came from that side because when I joined Microsoft and started helping out with these things, the very first person I met was the MCAS PG team, and they sort of indoctrinated me in. And I was with Jared when they were building out the PowerShell modules, and claim to fame, there was an internal project that was handed over from an internal guy by the name of Fail. It used to be called Fish Hunter. Well, I took it over and we re-engineered it and we called it MATA, the Malicious Activity Detection Accelerator, right? And this is before the other products came up to maturity and it sort of phased itself out because you can get the stuff from other products, right? So there is no right answer, but if it was an answer, MCAS is the answer. MCAS and French fries. So we talked about, naming your superpowers. Franklin, was going to badger you on one topic. We'll save it toward the end because he had to sort of eat his words before he can actually come out. But I want to ask you this: there are improvements coming all the time. Right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I mean, you can wake up tomorrow and open it up, and God forbid you're part of the private preview initiative, and you look in your tenant, you're like, when did that come there? I'm going to ask a hard question here. If you're in Sentinel on the landing page and you got all of the left-handed navigational points, or there may be something behind the scenes, give me your favorite feature right as of now. If I said, tell me, I'm going to showcase to a customer, they got to make a choice, and they got the guy's going to sign. Which one of these right here is going to close the deal on that left-hand side?
So those are two different questions. One is which one's my favorite, and the other one is which one's going to close the deal.
All right, I gave you two questions there. Hey, I'm a man of choice. The red pill or the blue pill? Which everyone.
So I'll answer both.
Okay.
My favorite feature is hunting operations, and it only because that's like my soapbox area. A number of our customers, because of using those older products, they've given up hunting. And that is so critical to security operations. It's so painful because it's a manual process, but with an Azure Sentinel, we do things to make it efficient and less painful, right? So that's my favorite area. That's where I spend a lot of time with customers to say, you must do this, right? Probably the thing that sells Azure Sentinel, besides the cost savings for our cloud services, was with a customer today, Splunk, or one of those other product clusters. And they're like, well, what's the value of Azure Sentinel? We have a number of customers that literally runs this other product side by side with Sentinel, because just by keeping the cloud in the cloud and on-premise, they save so much money. Oh my goodness. Other than the cost, the thing that really sells customers is the SOAR capability. And usually when I talk to other security folks or people in the industry and I say SOAR, obviously we know what that is. They immediately think about our playbooks, our logic apps within Azure Sentinel. But there's SOAR capability threaded throughout Azure Sentinel, and you don't realize it a lot of times. Our analytics rules, they run on a schedule. They look for that something that you tell it to go look for to expose that potential threat. That's part of SOAR, right? So that's an automated piece. Our live stream, right? For our hunting queries, you stick a hunting query in a live stream, it runs, forces that query to run every single minute. If it increments, if it finds results, it's going to alert you to say that there's an active threat within your environment. That's part of that SOAR capability. The biggest part and piece of the SOAR capability, which customers look at and what they think, is they read about our playbooks and they say, oh my goodness, I can deploy a security tool and guess what? It's going to do everything for me, right? So that's the one thing. And I'm very careful with customers, very careful with anybody when I talk about this SOAR capability, particularly from a playbooks perspective. I highlight the other things I just highlighted, and then I end up on the playbooks and say, well, you have to be very careful, very mindful, very intentional about the things that you automate. Playbooks are awesome for providing additional context for your investigations, like compromised user accounts, compromised reported IP addresses, things like that. That's valuable for investigations. It's valuable in identifying when you respond the same way for certain incidents all the time. Maybe there's some things you can do in relation to, in addition to creating an incident, you can execute some kind of automation. Like, for example, as an analyst, when I even suspect for a second that an account is compromised, it may not be, but if I suspect, I'm going to lock that user account out, and then I'm going to investigate, ensure that I've done the right thing, even if it's my CEO. Even if I get a phone call in the next 5 minutes and somebody's yelling at me, I'm going to lock that user out. I'm going to do the due diligence so that the rest of my account rest of my environment is not compromised. But you have to be careful and be very mindful and intentional about some of those things where you apply automation. Automation is awesome. It's cool. Our playbooks are great. I was on with a partner of ours. It's been about a year now. One of our Irish partners is going to do a webinar for their customers. We were practicing the night before.
It wouldn't be born in the cloud, would it?
No, it wasn't them.
Okay.
Somebody else.
Okay.
We were practicing the night before. I was just going to do the intro and leave it to our partner to do the demo of Azure Sentinel. They wanted to run some playbooks. We wanted them to be the expert, for their customers. And so they ran the playbook outside of an incident, and it was literally to lock out a user. But guess what it did?
Locked out all the users.
Locked out every user account in their Office 365 tenant. And if you're
course
familiar
it
with
did.
that requires a call to support. So we kind of had to bump off the call. Like I said, it's powerful, it's valuable, it's awesome, but only when you do it right and you do it in the right context.
So let me ask you. All right. So I'm a fan of Defender for Endpoint. Okay. So you have to understand.
You're a fan or a groupie.
So
there you go.
The Defender for Endpoint UI is a purpose-driven UI for dealing with investigations on the endpoint. So there's a lot of features right there. Click the button, you're doing the thing that you need to do, versus depending upon Sentinel to have the logic apps there to go and do what you're trying to do. So in a lot of ways, I would prefer to do that sort of work with inside Defender for Endpoint, if we're talking about endpoints, versus with inside Sentinel. So where do you stand on the purpose-driven UI that's available with inside Defender versus Azure Sentinel?
So there's some improvements coming that in private preview and stuff like that for Azure Sentinel. That's kind of going to go down that same type of path, and some improvements for the playbooks and the automation and things like that. I do absolutely see the value in that. If I were a groupie for Defender for Endpoint, I would probably agree with you.
How do I kick off a live response or remote response? I can't remember the names now, believe it or not, from Azure Sentinel. How do I do the live response?
In respect to what's
going to the endpoint?
He means the
Well,
live stream.
No. It's to doing a remote access to the endpoint to run some PowerShell scripts. That's just a button for me with inside Defender for Endpoint versus I can't do that. How do I get the, collect an investigation package from within inside Azure Sentinel, get access to those files, run some forensics tools against what's come back?
So within the playbooks within Azure Sentinel, the logic app connector for the API for that, right? We can do something very similar, but yeah, absolutely. We have to create that conduit between Azure Sentinel and Defender and force Defender to do that for us.
Do you see the Defender UI, Defender for Endpoint more specific, even though Defender for Endpoint is pretty much in this Microsoft 365 Defender UI right now.
Right.
I don't have access to the unified portal yet, but do you see that unified portal being brought up into the Sentinel page so you can actually click those buttons and make those things happen? Are they going to start moving over the Defender purpose-driven UI into Sentinel? Is what I'm trying to say. Do you think?
So keep in mind there's kind of two discussions I think that we're kind of having. Is one's kind of a feature and future product feature type of thing, which there is sometimes some logic behind all that, right? Some direction. The other piece of this is we absolutely have two products that we're talking about here. One is Azure Sentinel in the way it does things. One is Defender in the way that it does things. But there's a reason why there are two products. There's actually a reason why there's a security console, literally in every product that we have, right? In a perfect world, how should I put this? I was going to say all our products would be free and everybody use them. No, in a perfect world, we would have one product that literally did everything. But the way it is today, not every customer uses every one of our products. So we have to. The way that Azure Sentinel is developed is different than Defender, and the teams are different, right? So the priorities, the roadmap, and everything is different. I can't really speak to, how those differences between the teams, how those products are produced. Just, everybody's going to kind of have their favorite, right? So it's difficult for me to actually, say, this is great, and, and bash another product. They're both great. And it's the type of customers, we have enough products within our product groups that a customer is going to find something. Our ultimate goal from a Microsoft perspective as that security vendor is to ensure that our customers are secure, right? Mm-hmm. Azure Sentinel is great because it's a platform. It's almost like the tofu of security products where you can literally connect everything and it becomes what you want it to become, right? Eventually, because of the things you connect and the ways that you build intelligence. Those other products, they're going to be a good fit somewhere else, right? For that different customer. So they all have their purpose. Our entire goal is just to secure our customers. If you use this product and you have a secure environment because of it, that's awesome. I work on Azure Sentinel, so I'm going to say, hey, this is how we do it. Come here, let me show you.
And I agree with you. I'm not that person who has that pie in the sky dream. And we'd love to have you back on the show. And as you come back on and be a friend of the show, frankly, I'll tell you about the keywords and phrases that trigger me, right? Number one, POCs, don't like them, right? Number two, best practices, they don't like that either, right? And the other thing is, what is a unified portal or a single pane of glass, right? I live in a house. I lived in a house before this house, and I lived in a house before that house. I don't think I've ever seen a single pane of glass except for in a church, right? So for anyone to think that that can be a reality in a short term, when only a few companies are really positioned to do it, Microsoft, Google, AWS, IBM Cloud, because they own a more robust ecosystem that includes multiple products that they can consolidate. But when you start looking at my number one which I would go 0, right? 0 to 1 out. My number 0 trigger word is best of breed, a phrase. I hate it. What is best of breed, right? And so when you start reading these Gartner, Forresters, and everybody else, they are valuable as long as you have a grain of salt as you read them, right? And so salt, right? And so what I say is your day-to-day operations and requirements and company mission goal dictates what your single pane of glass is. When I was on the partner side and I had to cover the entire M365 stack, some partners were cool with all I have to do is open up 4 tabs and I can do my whole job all day. Yeah. And then I don't know if you know another guy at Microsoft by the name of Nathan Swift, right?
Yep.
He's really good. He's been on the show, friend of the show. He wrote a little plugin and he customized the dashboard that all of those are there. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool, right? And that's easy to be able to do it. I think that the unified portal is a great step there. But frankly, even as you said, I use your term all the time. It's a customer-driven UI.
Purpose-driven.
If I can get down to 2, and Sentinel is saying, hey, you need to go look at something, as long as it tells me where to go look, I'm fine. Because if this alert manifested here and it says, hey, this manifested in MCAS, and I got a button to see the alert and or the incident, and it can take me there and start me off in the same security context or the investigative context that I'm going to look at, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Now, what I like to see is what I'm seeing in Sentinel is that if I am in an investigation, being able to share where I am within that investigation with my peers, right? If it's a 10-step process, I'm in 5, being able to share wherever I'm in my investigation to someone else. I like that. I don't know where the road is going to go, but if I was in charge of stuff, but I'm sure they're smarter people than myself, right? Sentinel would just be nothing more than a place where we aggregate the logs, understand what we have, and then that Defender UI is where I do the heavy lifting. Just tell me what I need to know over here. And maybe we consolidate and collapse all the other stuff away, and then we give Franklin his wish that the Defender for endpoint is the portal, right?
That's not my wish.
Well,
You send
everybody
everything
can,
to Frank.
but so
Frank,
number 6,
what it does-
on my thing that when Franklin absolutely want to spin me up, he'll start the podcast off. Well, Edward, let's talk about licensing. I'm not talking about licensing.
No,
I'm not doing it
not cost, not licensing. No.
because he knows that just gets me hot, right? I had hair when I first met him 2.5 years ago, right? But since being a comrade,
Was
and a
it
peer,
your hair though?
it was my hair. But since with this guy, I have no hair. So that's a very good insight on that. Things evolve. The strength of whatever portal that you choose to do your security line of business within Microsoft, I believe, makes Microsoft a heavy contender against any and everybody. Sure, you're going to have some people in these quadrants that may be better, but if they have 100 things and you use 50, and we have 60 things and you use 59, which is the better product? Now I know that's not the gospel because you may have some unique use cases, but I sometimes think less is more. And I know that we got some competitors out there, and I won't, and Rod, you don't have to shy away from saying competitor's name, right? Say their name, right? If Splunk is someone out there, I encounter Splunk all the time. That's okay.
Not until the Gardner report comes out.
And we missed a cycle. One customer said, "Why are you not on the Gardner report?" 2 reasons. First of all, I don't subscribe to it, and second reason is that we probably missed an evaluation cycle. But this is why, and this is what I told the customer. They've never seen anything like us at all. They don't have anything to base it against. So everything they're talking about is speculative, and they're learning on the go. They're one blog post away from what the customer is reading, actually, to tell the truth. Within reason, they're talking to guys like you who are insiders and saying, you know what? Sentinel can cook eggs too. You can program all your IoT stuff, right? And see someone breaking into you. I get it.
Defender for kitchens.
Defender for kitchens. There you go. Because my Samsung refrigerator is always trying to tell on me. Have no idea why. and then
So Rod,
But
what are two more things, because you've already mentioned one, what are two more things that you say that customers are currently underutilizing about Sentinel? You said hunting.
Hunting. Yeah, well, it's not that they're underutilizing it for Sentinel. They're underutilizing hunting in general. So, hunting is, great preparedness exercise. You hear something that's been announced, some new activity, some new potential threat. You need to be able to hunt for it in your environment, right? You need to take that threat intel, figure out if it exists before official threat intel is available for it, either through Microsoft or a third-party threat intel.
Being proactive versus reactive.
Yeah. So that's just underutilized in general. Azure Sentinel is making it less painful and easier to do for customers, so they're starting to use it. One of the other, surprisingly to me, one of the other underutilized areas is our investigation graph. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So you go into an incident, you got the little investigation button down at the bottom. Click that, it creates a graphical view of that occurrence, the whole timeline and everything. And you can dig down and figure out who did what, when they did it, where they connected from. It ties that whole storyline together, which I think is extremely valuable. But for whatever reason, maybe we just do such a good job providing context for the incidents themselves. They don't take that extra step. What I'm finding people are using more, which is interesting, because you can use them both for the same purpose, is our entity behavior. So it released out of preview a couple months ago, 3 months ago, I think. And you just literally click through, look at users and hosts and things like that, and look at the history of that to get better context of what that, should that user have been able to do that? Have they done it before? What types of activity have they had in our environment for X period of time? They're using that a lot more than they are the investigation graph. I love the investigation graph.
I hate to cut you off. That is, when I was trying to ask that question, I was trying to lead the witness. That is my favorite capability.
Yeah.
Being able to come in, and I use that often because customers who are adopting this is real to them. They may have been, especially if they already have a current product, this is their livelihood. They spent time and skill learning indexes, queries, YAML, and now you're telling them to go learn KQL. And so sometimes you got to break it up and say, hey, I get it, but go here for an easy win and do this, right? And then go back and sort of think about it. If this graphical entity analysis, investigation, drag the floating circles was a KQL query, what would it look like, right? How would you do that if you were trying to do the visualization? They're like, well, you guys don't have the capability. Not true. You get some semblance if you start writing workbooks and being able to look at the visualization, understand how to put graph charts, pies, and all this other stuff. And I try to tell the customers, well, what I want to ask this question to you. One of the things that I hear when I hear customers who are ready to adopt this, especially, and I only really hear this from customers who already have a product, new to the SIM world or immature in the SIM arena, don't really have a problem with learning KQL. It's just another tool. But
Right.
those who are Splunk, QRadar, Sumo Logic, I don't want to learn this, KQL is dumb. How do you lessen that resistance to them? If you had to sit here and say, I'm going to give you a little plan that's going to allow you to consume KQL in a manner that it won't intimidate you and you won't get mad. How would you recommend that?
So let me talk about KQL. I geek out on KQL. It's my big. So people that know me, if I have a hard day at work or it's a long day or whatever, you will find me with my laptop watching $6 Million Man episode and writing KQL queries.
We're just dropped off. He should come back on.
Okay. And writing KQL queries. KQL is a very significant skill set to have. And it's not just for Azure Sentinel. It's literally anything data-centric, anything that Azure Monitor exposes KQL for within Azure. Even our the Data Explorer stuff, right? So we can query literally anything and everything. Microsoft, I have a 3.5, 4 hour workshop that I deliver to customers a lot. I deliver a lot of Azure Sentinel workshops. There's customers that request just this KQL module. It's very easy to learn, very easy to understand. some of my best stories are going to customers that use Logarithm or QRadar or Splunk, going to these customers. And one example I have, I was with law enforcement customer, some municipality, like April of 2020. Yeah, 2020. One of my last trips I was able to take. They had one of those products. Their law enforcement would come into their office and say, we need you to look for X. So they would develop a query to go look for X. It would take them maybe half a day to develop the query, debug it, run it, determine it's going to get the right data back, and then they would execute it. The law enforcement knew that their SLA to return that data was 3 days. From a cybersecurity perspective, that's ridiculous. So I took their data, we ingested it into Azure Sentinel. I took a KQL query, we took their query, and we ran a race. And that KQL query returned exactly what they wanted within like less than 15 seconds. KQL by itself, the query language is excellent. It's not powerful, but the thing, because we're taking advantage of Azure, we're taking advantage of compute resources and things like that, it makes it extremely performing and extremely valuable. Who cares? It takes a little bit extra time to learn. It is just that important of a skill set to have. There's one other thought I was going to say about that, but that's really the deciding factor, showing customers how important it is. There's also tools out there. SOC Prime has what's called uncoder.io. If you go to uncoder.io, you can take your Splunk queries, your Logarithm, your QRadars, put it in the left-hand side and translate it into a KQL query. So it's really easy to take what you have developed already, right? You don't have to lose anything. You've developed your use cases, right? Let's just take those with us to Azure Sentinel. You don't have to leave those behind.
And I think a lot of those who are trying to evangelize that don't understand that there are opportunities for non-Microsoft companies to come in and fill that gap, right? Training, translation, migration. I mean, I've been in a Microsoft ecosystem forever, seems like, right? Either there or Cisco. And Microsoft has created more opportunities to fill the gaps with stuff they either didn't do or didn't do well, even though there was crazy talk decades ago about the monopoly aspect of it, right? But look how many companies came into existence because something Microsoft didn't do well, right? And, Microsoft wasn't a forerunner on, training. The company that sort of set the standard of proving your expertise was Novell, right? That was a thing. CNE, CNI, and all that, right? I was a board.
4.1 CNE was my last CNE test I took, I think. So.
I was 4, right? So I had to learn it. I had an opportunity to learn it early. There was an individual at Microsoft by the name of Mike Casas. And he said, hey, this is going to be the thing. And he showed me all these cool stuff queries. I said, what is this gibberish? This is going to be the data search thing for a lot of the data products. So
I got to tell you, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I would say that they'll come out with a KQL learning path on Learn.
Okay. That should be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. There's other good resources. Good friend of mine's doing a whole series on YouTube. Pluralsight has one free KQL course and one paid advanced KQL course. So.
Now the advanced one was free for a while if you jumped on it, but they didn't, and now they charge for the second one. But I would love to get a link, send a link over to your friend. We'll put him on the show notes if he has something on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Because I'm always learning, right? I know some really sharp KQL individuals at Microsoft, and they do some really cool stuff. One of the things that I did, and I'm going to work on a little bit more, is that when I see partners that are skilled, I see customers that are skilled, or if we're doing it in a lab, the one that you have access to in my private lab, there are a lot of cool KQL queries. And people go, can I have that? And so I wrote a PowerShell script. Nathan Swift and I did. Now, if I have access to that particular subscription/tenant, I can download every query that was ever run or is saved and put it in a text file. So I'm going to perfect that, and I'm going to put it on the GitHub. And then what we're working on is the import capability, being able to take any query that was ever any that you have from that you downloaded, we can instantly import it into your subscription and put it into your save side. I think we're dragging our feet a little bit because what we're trying to do is figure out how to do the same thing for playbooks, analytic rules, and a couple other things. As when I showcase this to my team, immediately everybody gave me 5 ideas on how to improve it. Right.
Yeah.
So the other thing you can do is go out to the Azure Sentinel community and take a look at the detections that they have out there, the parsers, all that other fun stuff to learn how to use it. I did want to bring up, am I crazy, or did they update the connectors to use the proper names now for...
yeah, they did that recently. So all the Defender stuff. So yeah, you can't find anything again. So.
Yeah. All right. Do you actually work with the product team? Do you get asked that question a lot?
So work with
or give them recommendations?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So a lot. Yeah. Product team, product group, just simply because I'm exposed to Azure Sentinel as much as I am.
Okay. So this is the thing that's driving me nuts. You ready? Are you watching my screen?
Yep.
I just want them to fix this one thing. It's a very small ask. Okay.
All right.
So when you're in security events data connector, right?
Yep.
Choose where to install the agent. Install the agent on an Azure Windows virtual machine.
Yeah.
Download the agent on the relevant machine and follow the instructions.
But
install the agent on a non-Azure Windows machine.
Yeah.
Select the machine to install the agent and then click connect. Do you see the problem here?
Mixed. It's okay. So
just do me that one little favor.
It's twisted. All right.
Yeah,
I see that.
Yeah,
you want to know what my big issue is?
Sure.
Okay. Go back to data connectors. Let's go to something like Office 365 that used to be the one that held the record in analytics rules. Go to the next steps page tab when it comes up. Go down to the analytics rules. So we have analytics rules almost for everything, particularly for our own services. When a customer stands up Azure Sentinel, they go in and they enable the data connectors, and then they go, okay, I'm done. What's next? Well, obviously you have to enable the analytics rules. Otherwise, Azure Sentinel is just a storage facility. The thing that bugs me is that wouldn't it be nice if you look through this list and over on the left-hand side, you just hit a little checkbox and said, I want this one, 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 I want this one. Enable all these analytics rules I selected.
So what drives me crazy is that most people don't actually think that these analytical rule templates exist until you put the connector in place, until you actually connect something.
Okay.
Which drives me crazy. Now,
and see that's the reason why it's on the next steps page, but they're like, oh, next steps. I don't know what that is.
All right.
Well,
so
let me defend the product. Right. I'm fair. The reason that you don't have that checkbox, and I've suggested this to the product team, both email, Teams, and in person, is because you would have to unify the configuration steps.
Exactly. That's
in the very background. Do you want SOAR capability? Do you want severity level and all these? And once you see that, now what I did say, all right, you telling me why it can't work. How about you give me something that you let me set a uniform?
Right.
I don't even know what the term for it would be.
So the things you're talking about, those configuration pieces, right? So adding automation to an analytics rule, adjusting the entities you're collecting, modifying the schedule. Those are things that you do along the way as part of evolution of the SOC. You allow the analytics rules to run. You identify those that are noisy. Then you go back and modify those things. Then you go back and find the ones that you're getting more informational alerts about and adjust some of the automation to say, hey, this is cool. Let's just go ahead and close it out and send an alert to somebody, right?
But here's an example of Defender for Endpoint. This does, I mean, the thing that I showed you before is just wrong text, right?
Yep.
I disagree with create incidents recommended. I disagree with that. For two reasons.
Without create incident, So without create incidents, you literally get nothing except.
Oh, you get the alerts. that you can utilize with inside
with other things.
with other things.
Right.
But now you're creating incidents when incidents are already over in the other portal. So now who's responsible for the incident?
I think that if you wait long enough.
Now the other thing is this, is that when you enable this, it's using
Yeah.
all the default settings
Yeah.
versus going and configuring that, because you still have access, because all this is doing is actually just enabling the
It's creating a bridge between that originating service and Azure Sentinel. It's literally just
but
filtering
all
in.
it's doing is enabling one of these rules.
It's all it's doing is creating a bridge that sends the alerts from the originating service to Azure Sentinel. You
Right.
create the policies there. MCAS is a great example. Create the policies, and then those alerts get forwarded to Azure Sentinel. So again, I hate to use the term, but you have that single pane of glass for all those security products that you have connected here.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if I'm going to come in here and send something over from Defender for endpoint, I want to come over here instead of them automatically creating the rule for me, utilizing the defaults.
Yeah.
I'd rather come over here, create the rule, figure out if I'm going to do any excluding of any specific alerts and stuff like that, and people just don't realize that.
Now, I'll go back and say that if you can find an easy common criteria and just set everything to maybe medium so you don't get inundated with a deluge of alerts that are benign, I have to go back and retract my thing. I agree with you, Rod. I say that because out of the analytic rule, the one that's turned on by default is the multi-stage attack, right? It's turned on as soon as you turn it on, right? I think you're right. I think you should be able to have a checkbox to say, turn all of these on. So I'm at least getting the information. Now, the response to it and the severity level, let me go back and tweak it, but I'll start off at medium, right?
Yeah.
Or low. And then, and that makes sense because I'm gonna pile on this one. Here's my pet peeve about this. So go back to rule templates and sort of take out anything that's limiting you from seeing 1 through 7. Okay. Here's my crazy part about this. If you click, let's scroll all the way down to the bottom and click next. I'm still at the bottom, so I'm thinking I'm already done. Why not take me back to the top and let me know what I got going on? And so I was like, all right, where did I start?
I'm
Where
going
did
to
I
ask
finish?
them to keep that in there just for you.
All right,
Yep.
so now, to finish this off, right? I have to say that I think the most useless feature with inside Sentinel is watch lists.
It's a preview. Of course it's no. It's going to get better.
As a matter of fact, if you actually inside our chat type in exclamation watch list, you'll actually get what I think about it. So it's been an ongoing joke that I've been beating up on watch lists ever since it's come out. So you have to understand that.
So I'm looking in the chat. Is it just let's see? Frank says no.
Oh, Zoom chat or the Twitch?
Twitch.
Oh, I just closed Twitch. It was
I put
exclamation watch list.
Twitch is noisier than MCAS to me.
And then your dog like watch list. I see it. I see it right here.
I'll be adding in more things that drive me crazy in this.
That would be good. That would actually make a pretty good list, I think. Things that drive me crazy about. But understand that the reason why I think this drives you nuts is because probably these aren't updated. They don't sync, right? So you create the source and
because you could actually just do this through KQL right now and not have to worry about maintaining it.
Or use blob storage to store a CSV or whatever. And, yeah. So, but this is absolutely going to be, I think,
it's just been an ongoing joke that I've had with everyone about this.
And the thing about this is, I think there's a bigger picture because Sentinel has it. Defender for Endpoint has something like this, high value targets, right? So essentially a watch list. And Insider Risk has it. They have a watch list too. I saw a data connector for HR and then renaming it. And it's going to be something similar to this, right? Looking at behaviors, people doing something else. So, does it become like a product out there called Archer or something like that? It's coming and you'll be able to see it. I don't mind a little bit work. I think, Frank hates CSVs or something, so I don't know what's going on with that.
It's
right
just the not being able to update. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
and
thing.
that's coming. So
But you're a Logic Apps guru, man. You came from the Power Automate side, right? Power Automate, Logic App, same thing. Maybe.
As a matter of fact, if you put an exclamation power apps in the
Let me do that.
man, you're gonna make me open Twitch now. Okay.
Microsoft product who must not be named. I see it came up. That's okay.
there you go.
But hey, Rod, hugely helpful to hear your insight with the customers that you cover. I've seen you in action. You're the real thing.
I move in slow motion, just like $6 Million Man when I'm in action.
And that's fine, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I'm a big fan of yours is that I follow your webinars and I follow your training and your education. I love Day in the Life of a SOC. Whenever you have that, even though I've seen it 2-3 times, I still go watch you.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to see it. And so I'll continue to follow. And I think that.
And you have a LinkedIn group where you push out all your stuff too, right?
What's
all the
that?
blog
Oh
posts.
yeah.
I got to get more better on LinkedIn, man.
So I have a whole here. How do you share here?
I
Let him
think, do I
share,
have to
Frank.
give you?
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Give him permission, Frank. Let the
I'm
man do
working
his
on
job,
I'm
Frank.
working on an update. So about 2 weeks, I've got a day in the life of a Sentinel analyst.
you should be able to share now.
Revamping the you are host now. I'm completely revamping the day in the life of a Sentinel analyst.
Rod doesn't know how to get around in Zoom, man. He has to use Teams.
You can't see it?
No, are you sharing?
I'm looking for that grandfather button.
It's at the bottom. If you go down to the bottom of the screen, it will.
Oh, then you
up.
select it. Then you say share. Am I
There you
sharing anything?
You're sharing.
Azure Sentinel
Excellent.
casting call.
Oh, so it is working. What the? Okay. Yeah, I need one of those easy buttons. Do you have that, please? So I'm doing a complete revamp on a day in the life of a Sentinel analyst because, as you know, as you mentioned earlier, this product changes almost daily, and there's been a lot of new content and stuff. So there's just a little preview. It's going to be kind of cool.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be definitely an attendee. I'm one of those guys that when certain people do certain things, I don't watch it on the replay. I don't DVR. I watch it live. Right. That way I can ask you a question and not lose context about what my train of thought is, which is pretty good. I don't have any questions, sir. I think that as things mature, we get more questions from our listener. We'd like to have you back on. Franklin, you have any other questions for me?
Just any final words of wisdom for us?
Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom.
Best practices.
Best practice.
Let's see.
I will go best of breed next, right?
Don't pee into the wind.
There you go. Don't run with scissors in your hand. Don't take wooden nickels. Yeah.
Don't walk into barbells.
And apparently now you have to wear 3 masks when you're outside. So.
Well, I've been wearing 3 masks, so I'm good. Right.
All right.
But
so
hey,
are you willing to come back after we have fun at the product's expense at the end there?
Oh, absolutely. There's no, yeah, it's all good. I've
actually scared someone away before. So
have you really?
Yes, you have.
Was that what happened when Edward dropped off the video there for a second?
No, I dropped off because I heard a beep and my UPSs were going off and I thought I was about to lose power. So it's raining hard here. Here in Atlanta.
That's
right
no
now.
good.
But I actually put UPSs everywhere, including down in the basement where I got my my fiber modem and all my stuff. So it stayed up.
Do you have any recommended guests that we should have on?
Most likely. So I have a couple cohorts that would absolutely be stellar guests. I'll send those along. So internally, I also run a national Azure Sentinel pod. We, as I mentioned earlier, I was one of the very first to deliver on Sentinel for Microsoft. And up until like January of 2020, there was still only like 30 of us, right? So I've spent the last 6 months working extremely hard so I don't have to continue to work extremely hard to develop kind of an Azure Sentinel group of folks trusted, so we have a group of folks that deliver our workshops, and then we have the others that have been delivering on it long enough to understand customers' needs. And we're kind of doing deeper level, more advanced stuff. So we're kind of taking a little multi-tiered, multi-level approach for our customers. So I do have access to a number of individuals that I can recommend.
Notice, Franklin, I'm not in that group. Otherwise, I would know.
Well, so I have a few questions for you about that in our post show. So
I'm inviting anybody and everybody. I literally have like 3 or 4 shadows on every one of my workshops and engagements, just so people get interested, because I got to tell you, there's no end to my work, right? I'm literally, from the time I wake up to the time I try to shut down, it's all Azure Sentinel. It's because there's such a demand. There is so much work here. Oh my goodness.
And I'll tell you, I'm envious of you to be able to focus on that, because while I do cover it, I have to cover the other, MDFE and, AD for identity and IoT. And I'm thin. I'm surprised you can't see through me. But it's good. I got, Franklin is, don't let him fool you. He's one of the sharpest individuals I've met. Him and I formed a bond when we met almost 2.5 years ago, right, Franklin? More than that. And I was training, and he came up there and he was heckling me in the crowd. I'm like, soon as the fucking break's over, right? Excuse my language. Like, I'll get you, and we've been buddies ever since, right? And
was that exclamation watch list right there that you just said?
Yeah. And man, God, great having you on. We'll definitely get you back. I don't know if one of your inner circle is a gentleman by the name of Chris Bone, but he's coming on.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I was working with him a little bit earlier today. I'm gonna get him on in about 2 weeks. And so we want people to hear people other than Frank and I's either disagreement on the podcast, and it just deteriorates to name calling and mudslinging, right? About products, and bring value to our listeners. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is educate our consumers, our partners, our peers, and we want to be career peers. We want everybody to be comfortable with the product the way we are. And I'm busy like you, right? And I'm learning something every day. Right?
Yeah.
And as long as I'm learning something every day, that's okay with me. That's all right, right? It doesn't have to be easy, but I got to feel as though I am better than when I started today, right? And I think Franklin and I do a pretty good job, talking to each other, doing good work, sharing experiences, doing stuff, showing up each other's weaknesses, right? He's really good at some things. I'm really good at some things, right? And then that's it. So, hey, I definitely want to contact with you outside of the podcast. I did not realize you was a runner. I'm a big runner myself.
Yeah.
No races to run, so sort of running for practice.
When the podcast ends, don't hang up. I got a few questions for you.
Well, I'll end it.
Show.
So
yeah,
ending the podcast on 1/27/2021. Thank you so much, Rod Trent, for your expertise. I think I may go back on where you can see the old TV shows, TV Now, and watch some of the old $60 Million Man episodes, right?
So the NBC app, the streaming app, is the only place that you can stream it. So
really, and I actually have that. It has CBS and NBC, so go check it out.
Yeah.
All right. To all our listeners, thank you so much. See you next week. Where you only get me and Franklin, so you get useless banter. But hey,
all right. Until next time, Edward.